It's a romantic place to spend an afternoon, a crucial transport artery and a source of one of the elements vital to life. You join us down at Paris's River Seine on one of the Bateau Mouche tourist boats for this week's edition of Environment, where we'll be looking at the complicated relationship between humans and water. Coming up, first we'll take you to Bangkok, where the battle's on to stop the city sinking into the sea. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. In the island city-state of Singapore, that's no longer the case. Our correspondents have been to see how hundreds of millions of euros are being pumped into a desalination success story. Finally, bringing you back here to Europe, where scientists are worried that we could be getting a dose of drugs with our daily water. We'll be finding out about the latest high-tech solutions being trialled in France. These riverboats are a firm fixture on the tourist circuit here in Paris, whisking an estimated 2 million visitors each year right past world-famous landmarks. But for 10% of the world's population, water is getting a little too close for comfort. Bangkok is one city that could soon end up below sea level. It's dealing with a double whammy of rising seas and sinking land. Our correspondents with this report.
Bangkok, formerly the Venice of the Orient, has acquired a new nickname, the Titanic, in the image of the famous ship, and after decades of unchecked development, the metropolis is sinking. The capital is sinking 2 centimeters per year, with flooding a more or less constant problem.
Every year we live with our feet in the water, but the government does nothing for us. This time it's more serious. It's a catastrophe.
But a clay soil base and global warming are only two of the culprits in this pending disaster.
150 years ago, the population of Bangkok is only 400,000 people. But now there are nearly 10 million. We are urbanized without planning. Sinking Bangkok because of the pumping of the groundwater. We should stop.
To get an idea of the real threat looming over the capital, we travel down the Chao Phraya River to southern districts of Bangkok that open onto the Gulf of Thailand. In vain, inhabitants try to stem the advance of a sea that is swallowing all, roads and homes.
We must warn people. Today, we're the ones who are submerged. Tomorrow, it will be entire avenues in Bangkok. We urgently need to acknowledge the threat and to fight to save the city.
An example of resistance to the encroaching waters, the temple of Samuchedi, overtaken by mangroves. A few years ago, it sat in the middle of a fertile plain. Today, it's an island, the last vestige of the hamlet. Only 2 monks remain. The others, and 2/3 of this community, have also left.
There you can see what is left of the hospital. And here, 30 years ago, this was a road. The government is doing nothing. But if we were in the center of town, I'm sure they would take better care of us.
The erosion of the coastline, global warming, and unchecked urbanization have predestined Bangkok and its environs to an environmental disaster. If nothing is done, millions of Thais will be affected.
Now, the Seine is the biggest and most famous of Paris's rivers, but the water needs of millions of Parisians are actually served by 6 different rivers. Not all cities are as well hydrated, however. Singapore is one place that's surrounded by sea but lacks fresh water supplies of its own. Its authorities have had to turn to the latest technology, not to mention huge investments, to come up with a saltwater solution of their own.
The jewel in the crown for Marina Bay Sands is unquestionably its swimming pool, commanding a spectacular view of Singapore from a height of 200 meters. And what better way to enjoy a splash than with a glass of champagne? Looking at all this, it's hard to imagine that just 10 years ago, Singapore was still facing severe water shortages. The island state of Singapore has no natural water sources of its own, and in the past it always had to rely on water purchased and pumped across from neighboring Malaysia. But Singapore's goal is to become self-sufficient, and in the shadow of the city's skyscrapers, a new dam is creating a 10,000-hectare reservoir, one-sixth the size of Singapore.
The barrage behind me keeps the seawater out, and in so doing, it allows fresh water to be kept in our reservoir here. And the water here is then treated and become our drinking water supply.
But Singapore's greatest achievement is a product called New Water, which is in fact recycled wastewater. Here in this water plant, where school children learn about the importance of water for Singapore, sewage is treated until it is extremely clean, so clean in fact that it can be used in industrial manufacturing. French company Veolia has been involved with the New Water project since the beginning.
Here we have a reverse osmosis tube, and this is a cut-out version of it. Once the water has been through the microfiltration process, it passes through this membrane under high pressure in order to get rid of any impurities. After this stage, it's already very pure, but for New Water there's an additional stage of disinfection using ultraviolet rays.
The process of reverse osmosis is also used in Singapore's desalination plants which are naturally subject to tight security. Singapore currently produces 50% of its daily water needs and hopes to reach 100% by 2060.
Now, I wouldn't recommend drinking straight from the river, but for around a quarter of Parisians, their drinking water supply does come from the Seine. High-tech filters whisk away viruses, bacteria and other pollutants. But scientists are increasingly worried about the other substances that do sneak through, from food flavourings to spices, medicines to illegal drugs.
This river may look clean, but lurking below the surface lie potentially harmful trace chemicals. These traces of drugs and pesticides can be found in water even after it's been through the treatment process. But a new solution could be at hand, eliminating these molecules using ultraviolet light.
They enter the reactor in the water, and as they cross, the reactor will chop them into small bits, transforming them into water, carbon dioxide and mineral acid.
The results so far of the pilot are encouraging. The University of Toulouse in the south of France that's verifying the findings confirms that the use of UV rays is proving effective.
If we use a solution of 1 milligram per liter, so much more concentrated than in reality, in less than an hour, all of this paracetamol has disappeared.
This paracetamol and other medication in water is worrying scientists. They believe ingesting even minute quantities over a prolonged period could have far-reaching consequences on human health. The concern has spread to the European Union, and they are now looking into possible legislation to limit these trace chemicals.
Well, thanks for joining us on our boat trip and for watching this edition of the show. We'll be back again next week with more environment news from around the world. See you then.